President Sirleaf, known as Africa's Iron Lady, was Africa's first elected female head of state. She is a former World Bank and IMF economist. She was the first woman to lead the United Nations Development Program for Africa, and she has won both the U.S. Presidential Medal of Freedom and the Nobel Peace Prize for her nonviolent struggle for the safety of women and for a woman's right to full participation in peace-building work. Please join me in welcoming President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Vice President William Taylor, Ambassador Johnny Carson, Liberia's champion, Senator Chris Coons, Chairman Ed Royce. Maybe no one in the US Congress fought harder to secure Liberia peace than you. A grateful nation is in debt to all of you. U.S. Ambassador to Liberia, Christine Elder, my dear partner on the ground, my longtime colleagues and this event's sponsors, the United States Institute for Peace, the National Democratic Institute, the International Republican Institute, the National Endowment for Democracy, the International Foundation for Electoral Systems. Thank you for hosting. And as I turn and see my other congresswomen here, Bass and others, let me also say to you how much we appreciate how you've been with me and been with Liberia on this long journey. All of you and the sponsoring institutions have helped to build our democratic character and institutions, and I hope that many of you will be with us next month to witness our historic political transition. Honorable members of Congress, members of the Trump administration, distinguished diplomats, friends of Africa, friends of Liberia, ladies and gentlemen. On the 15th of March, 2006, I stood before a joint meeting of Congress. It was barely 2 months after my inauguration as President of the Republic of Liberia and the first democratically elected female heads of state on the African continent. I came here to Capitol Hill, to the People's House of the United States, to say thank you for helping us to secure Liberia's peace and democracy after nearly 30 years of sustained conflict. Today, the 25th of September, 2017, I return to the People's House as I close out my 2 terms of elected office. In 15 days, the Liberian people will go to the polls to elect a new president and 73 members of the Liberian legislature. It will be the first time since 1944 that political power will be transferred peacefully and democratically from one president to another. The election will signal the irreversible course that Liberia has embarked upon to sustain its peace and consolidate its young democracy. Indeed, the march of democracy is unstoppable in Liberia and on the African continent. As I said in my speech last week at the UN General Assembly, Liberia's transformation is powered by a world community that made a shared commitment to deliver peace to a country in a sub-region beset by civil conflict and cross-border destabilization. The UN and its partner nations were of one mind, and from that global unity, a Liberian democratic nation was born. But it was the United States of America, through the leadership of the United States Congress, bipartisan and bicameral, and with the support of successive US administrations, that guided the international effort. If I could, I would walk door to door to all 535 congressional offices to say thank you. But I cannot. I've run out of time. And I'm also mindful of my age. So this speech will have to stand for me to greet you for all that you've done. When I took office on 26 January 2006, Liberia was a failed state. Our citizens suffered under the total collapse of services and physical infrastructure. The streetlights and water pipes in Monrovia were stripped bare, robbed for their raw materials, and our roads were impassable. From the ashes of war, we rebuilt. We brought Liberia back into the Committee of Nations, reactivated our relationship with the Bretton Woods institutions, and renegotiated relief from a $4.7 billion debt burden. We returned fiscal discipline to government, rationalized our bureaucracy, and put in place new laws and regulations that helped open the economy to foreign direct investment. We returned our children to school, started to rebuild our healthcare infrastructure, focusing on maternal and child health and welfare. We established mechanisms to coordinate the generous assistance from NGO and from private donors and foundations. We reformed our civil service, improving a system that was overburdened and under-resourced, and invested in the next generation of leaders. We innovated in education capacity, building public-private partnerships, and promoted regional integration. Then in 2014, Liberia was struck by the terrifying virus, an unseen enemy more fearsome than war. Over 4,000 Liberians lost their lives. Thousands of children were orphaned. Livelihoods were destroyed. Our healthcare infrastructure collapsed. Concurrently, global commodity prices declined sharply. These twin shocks knocked us off our feet. Our growth rate, which had reached 8.7% in 2013, plummeted to 0. But Liberians are strong and resilient people. And today, our recovery is on course. The economic growth rate is now at 3% and climbing. Some 1.5 million children are in school, and new programs have been put in place to accelerate quality education. The lights are coming back on. I wish Speaker Pelosi was here so I could tell her that electricity has reached several communities in the capital city and is being expanded to rural areas. A record 872 kilometers of road have been paved, improving farmers' access to markets. Our healthcare system is being rebuilt, focusing on training community healthcare workers. Young people, powered by new technology, are embracing a culture of entrepreneurship. We left our mark. We have maintained the peace. We have built a foundation for democracy, economic development, and a rule of law. We have given a voice and hope to the market women, the girl child, and to civil society. The next president will inherit an empowered people. Africa now knows what a woman president can do. Liberia's transformation was achieved in partnership with the United States under the leadership of 4 remarkable U.S. ambassadors: Donald Booth, Linda Thomas Greenfield, Deborah Malik, and Christine Elder. And also under the stewardship of the United States Agency for International Development. I would like to recognize the presence of Acting Administrator Cheryl Anderson and Administrator Mark Green. Thank you. Administrator Mark Green, who will join us later. The U.S. supported the rebuilding of the armed forces of Liberia, the training of police, of immigration, and Coast Guard. You provided technical assistance to strengthen our rule of law and the integrity institutions to fight corruption. You supported education and capacity building and invested in healthcare delivery and sustainable agriculture practices. You helped us to rebuild our infrastructure, and you returned the U.S. Peace Corps to Liberia. On October 5th, 2015, Liberia achieved its most proud moment in the bilateral relationship as we signed a compact with the U.S. Millennium Challenge Corporation. Barely a decade away from conflict, we transitioned to a partner in development. It is through the MCC, in collaboration with other development partners, that the Mount Coffee hydroelectric power plant came alive, a facility that was dormant for over a decade. It was the US Congress, with your power of the purse, which singled Liberia out to be one of the largest recipients per capita of foreign assistance on the African continent. Dear friends, I said, your presidents who provided exceptional leadership and showed bravery, courage, compassion when Liberia needed it most. It was President George W. Bush who, in August 2003, told the world, enough is enough, and demanded that warlord Charles Taylor leave Liberia so peace could be reclaimed. He sent in the United States Marine to support an African peacekeeping force to stop the killing. He enabled the peace and created a space for democracy. It was in this opening which permitted my candidacy and ultimately my presidency. This was achieved in no small part through the leadership in Congress, all of you present here and not here, and also Chairman Ed Royce and his senior staff, Tom Shealy. It was President Barack Obama who, at the height of our health emergency in September 2014, took the bold decision in the face of fierce domestic opposition to deploy the men and women of the United States military to build a logistical bridge which helped Liberia to fight and contain the disease. With the support of the international community, brave healthcare workers, and resilient Liberian communities, our global health security was protected. Today, we are a country and a West Africa sub-region benefiting from a renewed commitment to building capacity for health emergency response. The economic community of West African states has embraced democracy as an integral part to development. Last year, when the Gambian president refused to cede to the demands of his people after losing an election, it was ECOWAS, under Liberia's chairmanship, which assured the peaceful departure of an entrenched leader and a return to constitutional democracy. In June, I relinquished my position as chair of ECOWAS, and in a few weeks, I will preside over the election of a new Liberian leader. I have served faithfully for 2 terms. I respect our Constitution and am making way for a new leadership. All of that has been made possible by you, my friends. Liberia's love of liberty was inherited from the United States of America, from your values of democratic governance, respect for human rights and the rule of law, and for equal opportunity for all, regardless of race, creed, or religion. You are the beacon of light from across the Atlantic. Even in our darkest days, our people held on to hope, believing that America would be there for them, and that if they worked hard enough, the American dream could take root in Liberia. America's leadership is needed today, more than ever, as the world faces new challenges, including transnational threats, rogue nations equipped with the most sophisticated weapons, millions of stateless families fleeing their homelands in search of security and economic opportunity, and our planet screaming for us to protect it. Dear friends, do not let the leadership void in our changing world be filled by the disruptors. The dream of America is alive in the hearts of all people who strive for freedom and for a better life for their families. Please continue to be its champions. And never forget what is possible. What we have done together as a united world community with a U.S. policy grounded in bipartisan cooperation. And remember, please remember, the Liberian people who are willing to risk it all for democracy, for peace, and for the chance to see their children live proud, productive, and dignified lives. Please continue to be a champion for the world. I thank you.